Hey everybody, Jam Creates here. Happy holidays. Happy holidays. I don't know. I'm in a good mood. I'm done with work. I'm on my way home. We had our Christmas party last night, our staff Christmas party last night. It was fun. Everybody had a good time. That's why I didn't do a video yesterday, though, because I was busy. I had to set up for the party, had to stay to clean up afterwards. But a good time was had by all. There was much merriment. And so that was a good thing. Today I want to talk about something interesting that came up. It didn't come up today. It came up a couple days ago, I think, or it might have been yesterday. I'm not quite sure. But I just wanted to touch on it because I haven't really done much talking about this topic. And that topic would be Star Wars. Yes, I'm finally making a dedicated Star Wars video. I am a big Star Wars fan, have been for years. You know, I was born in 1975, so, you know, I was 2 when the first one came out, but I've seen all of them a million times. I used to watch them constantly. I had the toys, all kinds of good stuff. You know, I was that generation of kids who grew up like swinging around wiffle ball bats or turning on flashlights and making the lightsaber sound effects. But what I wanted to talk about today was a Star Wars story, but it's kind of like, it's not directly, I'm not talking about Star Wars, I don't know, we'll see where it goes. The story I want to talk about is a story came out, apparently it was a tweet by one of the Lucasfilm story group people saying that The Last Jedi was written. The way he wrote it was The Last Jedi, the first draft of The Last Jedi was written before The Force Awakens. What some people have taken this to mean is that The Last Jedi was written before The Force Awakens was written. I don't think that's what that actually meant, though. I think what the tweet actually meant was, because if you read the entire tweet, he says, the first draft of The Last Jedi was written before TFA, so it's not a reaction to, or a whatever, to fan reaction. So basically the point I think he was trying to make was, The Last Jedi was not written as a reaction to people saying that The Force Awakens was too much of a rehash. Because there was a lot of that when The Force Awakens came out. There was a lot of talk of, oh, this is just a rehash of, you know, the original. And yes, I am one of those people who still calls the original Star Wars. I tend not to call it A New Hope. I tend not to call it Episode 4. I tend to just call it Star Wars. Why? Because that's what it was called when it first came out. And that's what it was called for decades and decades and decades. You called them Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi. Nobody back in 1977, or the 20 years after that, or the 30 years after that, called it A New Hope. Let's be honest. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So what I think he was saying was that the script was written before The Force Awakens was released. So there was no fan outcry. It wasn't like the movie came out, fans said, oh, this is too much like the original, it's too much of a rehash, and then they wrote The Last Jedi as a reaction to that fan reaction. However, what this means, and I think that's all that was meant to be, honestly, I think that's what that meant. I don't think it meant they wrote the second in the trilogy before they wrote the first in the trilogy. That just wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. They hired, and not to mention, you're telling me they would have hired Rian Johnson to write a movie, and then they were going to hire J.J. Abrams to make their first Disney-owned Star Wars film and tell him, oh, and by the way, you have to lead into this other movie by this other guy who's way less famous than you and way less experienced than you, because we want to make his movie next. No, that would never happen. And you know, I watched a video by a YouTuber who I really enjoy, and he was jumping to that conclusion, and I think it was just a simple mistake, a simple misunderstanding of the wording of the tweet. And listen, maybe he did it on purpose. I have no idea. Maybe he just thought it would be a fun video. And whatever. That's fine. Whatever, it's YouTube. You do whatever you want. And I'm still going to watch his videos anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But what this does get me to thinking is, it gets me to thinking, not how could they have written that one before they knew the fan reaction from the other one, or even, how did they write it before that? Because they didn't write them out of order. But what they did do, and I think this was the big mistake, because here's a shocker. I know this is going to be a really big surprise to everyone out there. I don't like The Last Jedi. I'm sorry if that hurts you. I'm sorry if that offends you. I'm sorry if that makes your feelings go all weepy and hide under a pillow. I didn't like the movie. I don't like it. Simple as that. I can like a movie. I can dislike a movie. Doesn't matter. My opinion and my opinion alone means nothing. However, I am a longtime Star Wars fan. I was at Star Wars Celebration in Orlando. I was there, and I was watching when the trailer came out, when they dropped that first that footage of The Last Jedi, and everybody went crazy because it looked cool. The trailer looked cool. Are you kidding me? It was finally, all I wanted to see is Luke. That's all I wanted to see, is what is Luke going to do, and how is he going to be, and, is he going to pull out the lightsaber, and, is he going to have, is he going to ignite the green, as some people were saying. And unfortunately, the only time he ignited the green was when he was about to murder his nephew because he had some bad thoughts. Which is just absurd. And I'm not even trying to get into that. This is not the topic. That's not the point of this video. There are tons of videos out there skewering The Last Jedi to the point where, you could open a kebab house with the amount of skewers they've put through that movie. My point is this. When they decided they were going to make a new trilogy of Star Wars films, they were going to make episodes 7, 8, and 9. That was a big deal. For Star Wars fans, that was a huge deal. We all thought after episode 3 that was it. We were done. There's no more Star Wars now. Because George basically said he was done. And for those of us who enjoyed the prequels, which I did, do I think they're perfect? No, of course not. But I enjoyed them. They were fun. They expanded on the Star Wars world, on the universe. They made things more exciting. They got you saw things that you didn't get to see. It opened up that whole idea of, the idea was there, of course, but it really got the Clone Wars, and then that whole Clone Wars era with the TV show and everything was fantastic. My point is that they launched a trilogy with no direction. They literally hired a guy. They hired J.J. Abrams, and they said, hey, you're really good at starting stuff. Why don't you start this new trilogy for us? You make up some characters, bring back the old characters, make up some new characters, give us a situation to work with, maybe some mysteries. You're always very good at that. Let's do that. And let's get this thing rolling. And then after that, they literally had no plan beyond that. They just said, well, we're going to make this movie. And then we're going to hire a completely different writer, a completely different director to make the next movie. And then we're going to hire a completely different writer and director to do the movie after that. That's not how you handle a franchise that you just spent over $4 billion to buy and that you're banking on. Because not for nothing, I love Disney World. I am a huge Disney World fan. I love going to the theme parks. But Disney World was getting spanked by Universal because of Harry Potter. And buying Star Wars was just as much so they could have a Star Wars themed theme park or something. I'm sure they didn't exactly know what they wanted to do, but I'm sure they wanted to do something to counter Harry Potter, because Harry Potter was honestly hurting them. And, not hurting them that bad, let's be honest. They still make gajillions of dollars off their theme parks every year. But that was what part of the reason they invested the $4 billion in, George's franchise. But how do you go into something like that and think, we'll just make it up as we go along? That makes no sense to me. That's absolutely absurd. I mean, the long list of movie franchises that have been undone because they were poorly planned is huge. Look at The Matrix. I just watched The Matrix the other day, the first one. That first movie is really good. That first movie is fun. I mean, it's, some of it, obviously it's very dated, but it's a good movie. There's good action, there's a good story. The other two, and you've got other stuff too that just falls apart when they do. I mean, I just don't get it, how you do this without a plan in place for all three films. Like, why wasn't you're telling me Rey's parentage was not planned out from the get-go, so that when they handed that over to Rian Johnson to write The Last Jedi, he could just do whatever he wanted with that. He could have said that her father, her parents were Jawas. Like, and no one, I mean, it seems like nobody would have stopped him, because honestly, like, the thing he chose to do sucked so bad, they might as well have said her parents were Jawas. That would have been better. But I just don't get, how do you do this? How do you start? It's going to be a trilogy. Like, that's the best part. It's going to be a trilogy, and yet you still don't plan for the three films, for what the story arc is going to be. It's completely absurd. And clearly, you watch that first movie, clearly J.J. Abrams did not plan for her parents to just be nobodies. He was clearly setting up for a big reveal of her to be part of one of the big name families in Star Wars. Was she going to be a Skywalker? Maybe. Was that in his mind? I don't know, maybe. Was he thinking, oh, it'll be cool, I'll make her a Kenobi instead, that'll be neat? Maybe he was thinking that. Maybe he was thinking, oh, she'll be, related to Darth Sidious somehow, or something like that. I don't know. I honestly don't know what JJ's original plan was, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't what Rian Johnson did. And this is my big problem, honestly. This is what ticks me off more than anything else about what they've done with Star Wars. They literally went into it with no plan. And that, to me, pisses me off more than anything else. I mean, for crying out loud, Luke and Han had a better plan when they were trying to rescue Princess Leia from the Death Star than these clowns did when they came up with launching this new trilogy. Everybody is so self-impressed and so sure of themselves nowadays that they didn't take the time to think, hey, maybe we ought to plan this whole thing out first. You don't build a house like just making it up as you go along. You have a blueprint. And then you build off that blueprint, and you don't build the roof first. You build a foundation. And then you build up the frame, and then the walls, and so on and so forth. If you want to learn the rest, watch Discovery Channel or something. That's how you build anything, including a story. You need a foundation, and you need to build it up, and you have to have a plan. The foundation of a story is the plan, the outline. Can things change? Of course they can. Of course they can. Something could happen, a performer could break out, and you could go, you know what? Maybe we need to make this character a bigger part of the next film, and you'll do that. And that's fine. You can make changes. But don't just literally go into it like monkeys flinging crap at the wall and just trying to figure out, oh, we'll do this, then we'll do that, then we'll do this, then we'll do that. Like, what do you, like, seriously? Has no one there ever written a story before? I don't understand how this happens. And I don't understand how Disney, of all companies, a company that was built on filmmaking, that was what Walt built the entire freaking company on. He started out making films. You don't know how films are made? You don't understand how to tell stories? You don't understand how to write a story? I mean, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Why did they even bother signing the actors to three picture deals? They might as well just sign them to a one picture deal, and then, just re-sign them if you need them, if you decide you want to put them in the next movie. We could have had whole different casts in each movie. I mean, who cares, right? None of it matters. You just need to put a movie out, and that's all that matters. It's Star Wars. People will go see it. That's irrelevant, right? Oh, wait, except it's not. Because the thing is, Star Wars didn't become Star Wars just because, for no reason. Star Wars became the giant, the giant franchise that it became because they were quality films. They were good, entertaining films. They were good movies. That's how it became what it became. It didn't become that because George Lucas was just like flailing around and just, oh, you write this and you write that, and I don't know, Luke, who, I don't know, kill him off. I don't know what we're doing here. Like, who, like, Vader, whatever, he could die. Like this makes no sense. Like, what the hell are you doing? How do you do this? It baffles me. It absolutely baffles me. It boggles my mind how you could go into making a gigantic trilogy. That first movie was guaranteed to be one of the biggest movies of all time, just by sheer virtue of the fact that it was the first new Star Wars film in theaters in years. In years and years and years. The last new Star Wars film in theaters, if you don't count the Clone Wars animated one, was Episode 3. People were waiting. They were waiting. They wanted it. And everything that they sold you beforehand of, hey, look, we're using real live effects. And meanwhile, there was more CGI in The Force Awakens than there was in any of the prequels, quite frankly. But that's a whole different story. It just boggles my mind. I don't understand how you can do that. How can you do a trilogy? How can you launch this giant thing that's going to be... If you screw it up, you are the biggest morons on the face of the earth. Like, going into that, you had to be thinking, like, don't screw this up. Don't screw this up. And you know what? I will quote America's favorite drag queen, RuPaul, when I will say, going into that, somebody had to say to them, don't fuck it up. Pardon my language. I mean, just don't screw it up. It's Star Wars, for crying out loud. It's one of the most beloved franchises in all the world. Just don't screw it up. Just don't screw it up. So, you would think you would take a lot of care and a lot of pre-production, a lot of time to really hammer out what you're going to do and what your plan is. And if it's really poorly received and you think you need to make changes after the fact when the first one comes out, that's different. That's absolutely different. If the first one were to come out, if The Force Awakens were to come out and the consensus amongst people who went to see it was that it was just awful, terrible, just no good, then fine, you got to make changes going into the next one. But everyone pretty much said, this is pretty good. This is all right. I mean, you've got some people who hate it, but most people thought, yeah, this is pretty good. This is fun. Felt like Star Wars. Was entertaining. Let's see where it goes from here. I don't think too many people were, I love this. This is my favorite Star Wars movie, if they were being truthful with themselves. Maybe somebody out there, it's their favorite, but I don't know how many people it's going to be their favorite one. But you literally didn't have a plan for beyond that? And for the one... All three of these movies should have basically been written before the first one even came out. They should have signed on, if not a director, at the very least a writer for all three films, so that the tone would be the same, so that everything would be consistent. You would have a vision for the story. Instead, George gave them his outline, and they said, okay, thanks, and then immediately threw it in the garbage and said, no, we're really smart. We're going to do our own thing. We're just going to, let cool people make movies, and they're going to be Star Wars movies, and we're going to make billions of dollars, and it's going to be freaking awesome. Because that's how Star Wars works now. So stupid. It's so stupid. It's honest to God, it looks like they were just lazy. It looks like they were lazy and they were counting on Star Wars, the name, carrying the day. Like any idiot could make Star Wars and it'll be successful. Well, you tried that. The idiot screwed it up. And it's not just one. I mean, I know, and I hold Rian Johnson personally responsible a lot of the time for the horribleness that is that movie, because that is his baby and he should take the responsibility. But there are other people at that company, and you know who you are, and you should hang your head in shame. And when you see your families at Christmas and you notice that the only people who bought Star Wars merchandise to give to people for the holidays this year were the people who work on Star Wars, maybe you'll think twice about what you did. Shame on you for not being prepared. Just be prepared. Do your homework. Do the prep work. Build the foundation and go from there. All right. This has been a longer rant than I expected it to be. Maybe I'll do more Star Wars videos in the future. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, there's other people who cover that stuff way more, in depth than I will. Although, who knows? Anything can happen. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Click like, hit subscribe, jingle that bell for notifications. Let me know in the comments. Do you want to see more Star Wars videos? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Are you also in utter disbelief that a huge company like this could just go into something and not plan it out all the way through? Let me know what you think. Follow me on Twitter. I'm at jam_creates. I'm on Instagram at jam_creates. I'm on Minds at jamcreates. I'm on DeviantArt. I'm all over the freaking place. Just anywhere you go, just look for Jam Creates and you'll find me. All right. So that's it. I will get back to you tomorrow with more videos. And happy holidays. Happy holidays. All right, I'm out.